remember sailing before walking, as it were. I mean, my earliest recollections are really of sailing. Started racing when I was, about 9 years old, I suppose. There's all this ocean around and all this breeze. It's so wonderful being able to harness all that and get to go as fast as you can with whatever boat you're in, Not sure what would happen if and when I have to stop sailing. We came on a banana boat from Barry Docks to St Lucia, and then we had our little sloop on deck, a 28-foot sloop. And when we got to St Lucia, they dropped us in the water. And then we sailed up here, stopping at every island. So I had a good idea of what it was going to be like coming here, because I'd seen all the Caribbean islands, When I sailed into Rhodes Harbour, that was it. I mean, it was perfect. It was so much, the whole place was just so much better than anywhere else that we'd been. I came for 2 years with the plan of going back to England at the end, and I'm still here. And that was 1965, and now it's whatever it is, 2022.
So how long have you been sailing, Tom?
65 years.
Wow.
I've raced against Robin on other boats as a competitor. He usually won most of the time. He's got a lot of experience. Sailing is a cumulative sport. The more you do it, the more you learn. Unless the weather's really awful, I'll go sailing. It was during the day when the eye of the storm passed over us, practically around noontime. And by the time the first eye wall arrived, the wind was blowing about 180 miles an hour. It was gusting to over 200 miles an hour. And when the eye wall went over, it just decimated Tortola and the BVI. This area where we are right now, there were boats upside down, boats underwater. It was the worst hurricane the BVI has ever experienced. There's a sense of survival. All of us that went through the storm and then stayed here after the storm to rebuild the place and to recover. 2018 was a tough year in the BVI. I hope I never have to go through it again.
Guided tour, yeah, well, obviously this was destroyed in the hurricane and I haven't really rebuilt it yet. You can see I just got plywood on the surface there. I'm going to rebuild it. And then in here, guest cottage, what I call the honeymoon suite.
What was it like being here?
Well, over there the roof came off and all the windows and doors, and I mean I ended up in the bathroom holding the dogs. Both ways.
How old are you going to be on your next birthday, Robin?
Next birthday I'll be 93. I really taught myself into being a doctor. When I was very small and young, I had a lot of problems, medical problems. I had one of my legs was funny, still a bit funny, but I wore arms during the day and splints at night and all that sort of thing. And then when I was about 5, I had what they called double pneumonia then. So I was critically ill, and the doctor came to see me very often. Visitors, when you've got young children, say, what does little Robin want to be when he grows up? But because the doctor had been, I said, oh, I want to be a doctor. When I went to New York, I had to have a photograph to show people. Yeah, here we are. Well, that's that. That was my composite when it came out for my 11 weeks in New York. It was no big deal, but then when I went to Paris and I met with Richard Avedon, it was the time when he had decided to change fashion photography. So he'd got the top female model in the world, which was Susie Parker. We went up to the Place de la Concorde and the famous shot on the roller skates. Considered to be absolutely the prime photograph that Avedon did. And one thing led to another, you know, it was just, that little turning point. And that was me in a younger day. There was a plea by the British Medical Association for young doctors in specialties to give a couple of years to a developing country. The BVI at that time, there were about 9,000 population, and they had just 2 GPs and no surgeon, but they were looking for a surgeon. I had no idea where they were. That's how it was when I arrived here. This was me operating, obviously. And I used to call that the PC terrace because that's where we had Prince Charles's dinner. You can imagine getting ready for the Queen, the country getting ready for the Queen. A reigning monarch had never been here before. You know, I spent so much time in close proximity to the Queen. I never saw her met her till she was here, but you know, for 7 years I was at St George's Hospital as a student or as a young doctor. And you know, over the wall there was the gardens of Buckingham Palace. I mean, I didn't realize that within 4 or 5 months or whatever it was, 4 months of coming here, I would be spending a time with her in my operating theatre. I mean, the hospital had to be painted and everything had to be spick and span, and the operating theatre had to be absolutely immaculate. And they even gave people green paint to paint any palm fronds that had turned brown. It was thought that by the time she had landed at West End off Britannia and then had a parade, and then the length of the island and then big parades here, that she might be a bit hot. And the operating theatre was the only air-conditioned room in the country. So that was my job, to cool her off. That was the patient's room, so one of the patient's rooms. So it was all beautiful, the operating theatre. And I just looked out at the ocean here, and I could always see what was happening in the harbour when I was operating. I mean, no point in not being able to see who's sailing in the harbour. I did have one patient who was under sedation doing something, and he opened a bleary eye and he said, "Stop looking at your boat and get on with the operation." When I went for the first time to the Olympics, it was in the days when it was purely amateur. The BVI had just become an Olympic nation in 1983. The first race we did was in the Olympics. We were never last at any mark, and I think we came next to last in the end. 8 years later, we decided to do it again. But the next time we took it quite seriously, and we actually bought an old Soling and brought it here, and we trained, and it was great. In fact, in the last 2 races, we got a 5th and a 4th, beating a couple of the medalists, which was quite exciting. It wasn't until the last day of the Olympics that I discovered that I was not the oldest athlete in the whole of the Games. Up till then, I hadn't been able to find anybody who was older than me. But on the last day, I found there was a guy in the small bore prone shooting who was 6 months older than me. So from then on, I had to just say, well, I was the oldest standing Olympian. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah, there's Little Misty. Yes, you're lovely.
She was found abandoned on a beach with 3 small puppies. And she was only about 11 months old, and it took a long time before anybody could get near her. But she's the most wonderful dog I've ever had, yes you are. That's me and Martha. She was an incredible woman, very talented, very interesting. We met on a dare. We were married within about 4 months. You know, we had an exciting life for the 30 years that we were married. Oh yeah, it was when we just won a trophy in New York, at the New York Yacht Club in Newport. That was me finishing a marathon. Martha was just walking the last bit with me. It was really bizarre because she had gone down to town and I was up at the house, and she was stopped at the traffic lights in town, and somebody ran into the back of her and then drove off, and she didn't realise she was injured, so she chased her. She was a good driver. She used to have a Porsche in the old days and had been to racing driver school, so she knew what to do. Anyway, she caught up with her in the next little village and then called me and said, you told me what had happened, and then she said, well, I've just developed the most serious headache. And then the last words she ever spoke was, I think I'm having a brain hemorrhage, and the lights went out just like that. So it's pretty tough. Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to cope with, when Martha died. This one kept me going.
Morning.
Good morning.
Beautiful day.
Morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Well, I've known Robin for many years.
What's he like to race with?
He's great. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, I've his vast knowledge and everything else, and then of course when we race in Antigua, he's just like an icon here, for us. But we do have a lot of knowledge, and we do have a lot of experience on board, so we're looking forward to at least placing on the podium.
For a lot of us, he's a hero to follow, If he's doing it at his age, there's hope for us to be doing it too. So we just got to keep healthy and keep sailing.
When I first came here 50 years ago, one of the main symptoms that a man would have when he came to, what are you complaining of? He said, Doc, it's like this, I've got the man staggers.
What's that?
Well, that's me staggering down the dock. Now I know what they meant.
The Round Tortola race has been going on for almost 50 years now. We just look forward to doing it every year. It's a regular schedule for a lot of us now after all these years. What do you do in November? Oh, we sail around Tortola.
Dr. Tattersall, he became a very big figure in the sailing scene out here. Raced in the Round Tortola race many years. Perhaps one of the most famous years was when it just says the Round Tortola race, and there used to be a bridge that you could open between Tortola and Beef Island, and Dr. T managed to speak with the bridge man and not letting on to anyone else, and got the bridge open so that he could sail through the shortcut and cut out Beef Island from the circuit. Completely legal, it says it's Round Tortola, and probably won the race that year, I'm not certain of that. Extremely well respected on the island and internationally, both on the water and in the surgery. He's a local legend.
There's nobody around here apart from me who did the first one. So it's a rather special event for me.
Round Tortola race, the island's 18 miles long, so it's about a 36-mile race. You go up the south shore from Nanny Key and around the top of the island, and then down the north shore where you've got bigger seas, and you've then got the spinnaker up and you're on a downwind run. Keenly competed in. Quite a long day on the water, depends on the breeze and the boat obviously you're on, but it can be anything between sort of 5 and 9 hours out there depending on the conditions, and it's only about 12 knots today.
Sailing is an amazing sport because sailing, you don't have a level playing field. The field is moving the whole time. The goalposts are moving. Your motivation with the wind is changing every moment. The wave patterns, you're not running on a flat surface. There's so many conditions there which mean that you have to modify what you're doing according to all those things. It is a most amazing sport.
You're charting your own path. There are steering your own course. If you're driving a car, you got to follow the road. In the ocean, you just have freedom. The best lesson in life is to stay healthy. Do something you like to do that keeps you healthy. You know, it doesn't have to be working out in the gym or, you know, running marathons. It just has to be something that you enjoy doing, but it exercises you, your mind, your body, so you can live a long, happy life. If you don't believe me, just ask Dr. Tattersall.
And here comes Libertas, Dr. Robin Tattersall on the helm, coasting up to the finish line. And there is the second place yacht, Swan 51 Goodspeed. Can the winning crew give us a wave?
Godspeed, well, Godspeed was near us at Steel Point.
Yeah.
But we ended up sneaking through past Steel Point, and we got through. And then we sailed away from
Yes, it was a good long day at sea.
What was Robin like as a teammate instead of a competitor for you?
He was at the helm for all the upwind legs.
But we stayed ahead of Richard, which was the goal, and had a fun day.
What was the best part of your day, Robin?
Well, I suppose coming in first to the monohulls.
Really happy. That gets me on the trophy three times now. Very happy.
Till next year.
Till next year. Next year, yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Okay, cheers, Robin. That was
Cheers, well
done.
Robin.
victory.
Thank you, co-skipper. Cheers.
Fun day. Cheers.
He's an inspiration, you know. He's a gem of knowledge. We had a great beat up the channel, and then yeah, he helmed the whole way, giving us his know-how, and it was good fun. Yeah, very good fun. And at 92, he's still on it.
And winning.
And winning.
Right.
How would you sum up the race in 3 words, Robin?
3 words. One is enough. Great. For me, it's always a great day when I can still race a boat and win.